Hello, and welcome to Live from Ghost Town, a poetry reading by yours truly, another dead poet. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to hop on here and do something a little more informal and a little more focused on kind of my poetry that I share over on my Instagram page. I'll drop a link in the description for that in case you're interested in giving me a follow over there. I would really appreciate it. But as I'm developing the next episode of Dead Poet Discourses, I had a couple of ideas, and one of those was a essay about the band Chat Pile. They're a noise rock sludge metal group from Oklahoma, and I had an essay that I wrote about a year ago that I just didn't know what to do with, and it was about their music and how they use horror and horror fiction as a means of political criticism. And it was something that I wrote last year that I was really passionate about and I felt really good about. But it kind of just sat on my computer. I didn't really know what to do with it. So I thought I could repurpose it for this. And I still might, but well, I stand by all that I wrote in that, and I think it was a good piece of work. It needs a little bit of revision, and it's just currently not really speaking to me. It's not really just kind of like I'm just not resonating with the piece right now. But what is resonating is I recently went to Crystal Bridges Art Museum and saw the Cause Family traveling exhibition that they have there. Went down there with a good buddy of mine. I had a really good time, but I walked away with a lot of thoughts about cause and graffiti and street art and pop art and kind of the ways we interact with those things and the way that we interpret art in general, and kind of delineate what is and isn't art. And because it's me and because it's American society, it always comes back to capitalism. So I have some thoughts there, and I'm developing a thesis and doing some research on that right now. So I think that's going to be the next Dead Poet Discourses episode. But that's in development, and I had originally I wanted to get it out this week, but I just realized I didn't have enough research that I felt I hadn't developed my thesis and done enough research and read enough articles and papers, and really just to feel like I had enough to really make that a full episode right now. So this is an idea I've been working on for a while. Is just getting on, and I thought it'd be fun to, or sorry. See, I'm trying to go totally just off the dome here, and that always makes it a little nervous, but I'm kind of having fun with it. Kind of leave some of these imperfections in. But yeah, I definitely wanted to get on here and read some poetry. I thought about doing this last week, but then I wanted to work on the next true Dead Poet Discourses episode. And it ultimately just decided that earlier this week that I was like, I'm going to do this weekend to get something out and really share some work that I'm pretty happy with. And then be able to spend some time working on the next episode, which will be on cause and pop art and capitalism. Really excited about that. I think it's going to be really interesting. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to start reading some poems here. What I've got planned for you guys today, I'm going to read 3 poems that are from my that I've already posted and shared on my Instagram page. Again, I'll link that in the description. Please give me a follow over there, like some stuff, share it with your friends if you enjoy it. Really appreciate that. I hate self-promoting, but you kind of got to do it. I understand that. So thank you for bearing with me on that. But yeah, I'm going to read 3 poems here that I've already shared. And then I'm going to read 3 that I have not shared yet. Some of them are older, some of them are newer. They might eventually go up. I'm not sure yet where those will land, but I did want to share a few new poems with you guys as well. And then I'd like to end by reading a selection from one of my favorite poets so you can get a little bit of insight into what really influences me and shapes my art. So, yeah, thank you for joining me. This is Live from Ghost Town, a poetry reading by another dead poet. Let me take a sip of water here, and then we will get started. All right, we are back. Sorry about that. I realized during the first episode and recording that just on accident while I was going through to edit it, I realized how disgusting taking a drink of water sounds on microphone. It is not a pleasant noise, so if you hear a pause here or there, it's probably because I stopped to take a drink of water. So Yeah, this first poem I'm going to read today is actually the first poem that I posted on my Instagram page, and that I really wanted to share. And it's one that I've tried to get published in a few places. A lot of these poems that I'll be sharing with you today, I have taken time to try and publish in literary journals or get different places in different kind of anthologies. And I'm going to be honest, it's just a tough game. It requires some resources, some time to do research, and just trying to balance that and work over the last couple years just really hasn't been a good strategy for me. If you know anything about publishing, and or trying to get into literary journals, I've been lucky enough to have a couple of poems selected, but the process is usually really tedious, and it's a lot of waiting, and it's a lot of rejection, and that's kind of the reason I started doing this. Is not because I think that I let me figure out how to phrase this. Honestly, I just want to share the work that I've done. I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it. It means a lot to me. A lot of the editors and stuff, I haven't really gotten a lot of success through that. And, personally, that always feels kind of, depressing and a little like it doesn't validate your belief that your art is worth sharing. But I don't think that's true. I think if you write and you put a lot of yourself into it, it's worth sharing, and you should. So for the longest time, I was really averse to the idea of being like an Instagram poet or something like that. But it really did just seem like the best way to get it out there. And I think a lot of Insta poets do a lot of creative and interesting things. So yeah, I kind of just got over that, being I think probably just a pretentious asshole and being like, no, I don't want to do that. But also there for a few years, I didn't use social media because of just some personal things and just anxiety and mental health reasons. I just thought it was better to be off. So it took a lot of courage to get back on and start sharing work and really being kind of open with that. But it's been a good process. And all that's to say is I picked this first poem. It's just titled Midwestern Gothic. Because I think it's a really good distillation of like a lot of the things that I really try to. I think it's just a good distillation of the type of poetry that I write. Like, I think it's a very representative piece in that it focuses a lot on kind of creating that atmosphere, particularly influenced by kind of Gothic literature and Southern Gothic literature. Takes a lot of imagery and kind of logic, I would say, from Surrealism, which is one of my all-time just favorite art movements. I've done a lot of reading about like the origins of the Surrealist movement in the 20th century, and it's always been fascinating and invigorating. And I just find the images and the poetry and the films and stories that come out of that genre to be really engaging and just kind of very vital and very human and very imaginative. And so I try to capture a lot of that in there too. And I think this one also speaks to something that I've really been working on, which is kind of brevity. I have a tendency, as you probably already noticed, since we're 8 minutes into this and I haven't read a poem, I do have a tendency to be a little bit long-winded. So this is definitely something that I try to curb in my poetry and really be conscientious and precise with my choice of words. And I think it's a good exercise. And I think this does a good job of being not only brief, in being well thought out, but I think it also does a good job in being accessible and kind of conversational. Even if there is an atmosphere to it that is a bit, contrived, I think the language in this is pretty conversational and the diction's not too hard to follow. So, let me stop rambling and just go ahead and read a poem. This is Midwestern Gothic. The listless, gentle wavering of the lake's surface shatters the face of the moon into fractals of alabaster. The loon's lament slinks through the viscous air like the serpents slithering along the banks. From the tangled arms of sunken trees arises a menagerie of things long forgotten, floating up from the depths like flumes of smoke from a dying bonfire. A wedding gown with a single spot of blood staining the tattered hem, a paper boat discolored by ink smears, bruised with the memories of notes lost to the ether. A single, tangled strand of gray hair gathered in a waterlogged ribbon. A simple, elegant pipe carved from pine, the embers of the last smoke still smoldering and releasing hints of tobacco into the breeze. Although arriving huddled together in congregation, the artifacts soon disperse toward the ends of the earth. I watch from the branches of a pine tree, a barn owl with a tragedian's mask, until a stray storm cloud eclipses the moon and paints the earth black, like a cool, vaporous breath blowing out the last candle, illuminating a solitary cabin in the woods. Thank you. So yeah, that's kind of the first piece that I shared. And again, I think if you like that or understood that, I think you'll kind of understand a lot of the other things that I write as well. So the next poem here is a more recent one that I shared, and this has been it's a more recent one in terms of sharing it online. But this is a poem that I wrote 2 or 3 years ago that I absolutely love this one. It's gone through a few revisions. It's gone through a few different titles. But this one just I really like how the imagery came together. I really like how it follows a narrative, and how that kind of progresses. I really like a lot of the themes that it works. I was able to kind of work into it. And again, not really intentionally. I think if you're, kind of into the creative processes and you really get into that flow sometimes, you're not thinking about themes. You're just thinking about putting it together because you think it sounds good or the story's good or, it kind of works, and just you get kind of caught up in that. But kind of through the revision process, I think that's really when you start to see like, oh, okay, this is maybe what I was working with, and that I can kind of heighten that a little bit as I redraft this. So yeah, this one is called A Dead Man Walks These Mountains. Like I said, this one started out, I think, as the first title was Lazarus of the Ozark Mountains, and I really just like first of all, I like phonetically how the name Lazarus sounds. I think it has I don't know, I think in it, obviously you can't you can't disentangle it from the connotations that it carries in the Christian canon, which I grew up in the church, and even if I have a tenuous relationship with Christendom and Christianity as a whole right now, I'm sorry, that's a Kierkegaardian term right there, so I sounded like I was from the 19th century. I apologize. 20th century? I'm sorry. I'm kind of... Sorry, that was kind of a tangent. But yeah, that was a very Kierkegaardian phrase. But yeah, even if my relationship with Christianity and the faith is a little tenuous, it still definitely has an impact on me. And I think Lazarus, the reason I titled that is that shorthand, people understand that means a figure that comes back from the dead. But it honestly just didn't really fit. I think the Christian connotations just don't really, it doesn't come through in the poem. It wasn't written as a religious piece or as a piece with that in mind. So the current title, A Dead Man Walks These Mountains, I think is far more fitting. So without further ado, this is A Dead Man Walks These Mountains. I rise from the dirt to lurk under street lamps in forgotten towns, tucked into the contours of the highlands, haunting dilapidated streets for nothing but the pure bliss of being a quicksilver abstraction in a place where time stands still and grows brittle enough to be shattered by the windstorms of a horsefly's pellucid wings. Some nights, a rusty pickup with a tattered lung for an engine passes by, and the driver will half perceive me from the corner of their eye, a drop of oil unable to mix with the dark, deep waters of their pupils. Concrete enough to be understood as human, immaterial enough to be formed into any face their mind wishes to sculpt. I never attempt to flee or to hide. I stay put, like a silhouette watching a departure from behind a screen door. They always try to brush me off as an illusion conceived by the moonlight's sleight of hand. They pull into gravel driveways as fires burn in the pits of their stomachs, and the smoke that suffocates their minds causes hot tears to trail down wrinkled cheeks. All the while, I remain, reclined against the lamppost, cleaning the dirt from beneath my nails with a stolen pocket knife. Thank you. I'm going to pause again to take a drink of water. I'll be right back. All right. So yeah, that was Dead Man Walks These Mountains, poem that I've really loved for a few years. And this next one is actually a newer one. I think I actually wrote it earlier this year. This one is entitled Nature's Mercy. One thing about me is I am completely fascinated and sometimes hyperfixate on tornadoes. I think it's Midwestern core. And having grown up in the, Tornado Alley, it's something that's definitely been a part of my life. Shout out the movie Twisters. I think I've seen that. Twister, the original, not Twisters, the remake. I refuse to watch it. Don't ask. I will die on that hill. It's a principled stand against, I guess, unnecessary remakes. Although, excuse me, I don't think anyone cares, nor should. If you like the movie Twisters, all I'm saying is you should enjoy it. Don't listen to me. I'm tired of remakes or repurposings of intellectual properties from the past. Do not remake Twister. R.I.P. Philip Seymour Hoffman. We love you, buddy. Great role. The fact that that's Philip Seymour Hoffman, the same one that was like won a Academy Award for Capote, and was in like The Master. Yeah, that shit's crazy, dude. Like, go watch Twister. After you're listening to this. So yeah, I love tornadoes, and I think a real big part of like why I love watching footage of it is I wrote about this in a piece. I think it was an album review or spotlight that I wrote on for and posted on Instagram about Deafheaven's album from this earlier this year, Lonely People with Power. Go check that out. Brilliant record. Just beautiful mix of like black metal and post-punk and shoegaze and like even some like post-rock. It's just beautiful sounding record, just lots of aggression, but lots of really shimmering and atmospheric and gorgeous guitar tones, and just some really good like dream pop infused melodies that pop up throughout it too. But the point that I'm making there is that like a big thing that I always really find fascinating is kind of like when you mix the grotesque with the beautiful, and I think that's really what people mean when we're talking about like the idea of the sublime. And I think tornadoes are like the perfect natural manifestation of the sublime. Like, they're terrifying, they are destructive. When you watch videos, they can look just absolutely menacing and horrific, but like they're also just genuinely super beautiful. And that's I think why I get so fascinated with it. Like, it's not really the mechanics or like the science behind it or like the meteorology or anything like that. It's just like I just like watching footage. So this is inspired by tornadoes, and it's also inspired by a story that I remember hearing as a kid about like a man that was sleeping during a tornado and got thrown several miles, but like because he was asleep and his body was so limp, it didn't injure him at all. And I don't know if it's a local story or if that was a national story, but I kind of repurposed it and repackaged it for the purpose of this poem, so that it will appear at some point. So yeah, this is just a lot of like long-standing interests and little things like that. So yeah, this is Nature's Mercy. The hoarfrost of half-sleep glistens from the ends of my eyelashes in the lightning's epileptic dance. When nature's war drums sound in full force seconds later, the building's bones tremble beneath their menace, while the wind scratches at the window like a black-eyed dog carrying a shredded bird in its mouth. I wait, suspended between the ephemerality of dreams and the solidity of wakefulness, unprotected and amorphous, straining for the sound of a siren amongst the summer storm's fury. A story I heard in childhood rises through the fog in my mind, the tale of a man living a few counties away, being thrown from his home by a tornado while fast asleep, and waking up in a field 1,000 yards away without a single injury. I picture myself flying with the raging wind, somnolent and oblivious, surrounded by debris, body as relaxed and unbothered as a child riding a carousel with their mother. The sirens remain unstirred, despite the sky's bombast, so I remain in bed, obstinate and resigned to the belief that nature will show mercy to those who choose not to resist her dominance over the realm of the living and awake. Thank you. All right, so that is it for the poems. Hold on, taking another drink. And I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. So that's the end of the poems that I have already shared. So I'm going to get into some new work. And I want to start with a poem simply titled English. And this was inspired by the latest Billy Woods album. And I'm not going to say the title, just go look it up, because the title is an offensive term, derogatory term that Billy Woods has repurposed for this album, that really explores kind of this, when we talk about political horror, this is another project I'd really like to write about in that vein. But this record really does a great job. Really, I say great job, but it's horrifying and it's brilliant, but it is a difficult listen. It really does an incredible job of kind of elucidating sort of the elucidating. I think I meant illuminating. I apologize. Of illuminating kind of the everyday horror and just terror of being a poor person in the United States, and particularly a poor black person in the United States. It really does an incredible job of looking at these intersections of capitalistic exploitation and wealth inequality, and how that intersects with the deep-seated history of racism in the United States. And Billy has it's just a brilliantly written. I'm sorry, I'm kind of at a loss to words. I know Earl Sweatshirt once said that I think it was him, that when you're talking about Billy Woods, you're not talking about great rappers, you're talking about all-time great American authors. And I think that this album, his last record, again, go look it up, is just such a perfect. It's just exemplary of that fact. It really is, like, without having sat down and like actually written anything or prepared a statement or anything about it, it's really hard to encapsulate. But the way that it like I said, it really just illuminates the everyday horror and abject condition that racism and poverty present so many people with on a regular basis is just powerful and moving and terrifying and effective. And if you are at all interested in, learning about our society and the economic conditions and the oppression and the hardship and the, just really all of the difficulties that our marginalized communities in the United States face, this album is a incredibly powerful statement on all of those things. But I believe it's on the title track. He's talking about how he uses the phrase, the English language is violence. And that has stuck with me for so long. Like, it's been I just come back to thinking about this. And he's so correct in that, like, English, when you think about it, is the language of imperialism. It is the language of oppression, is the language of exploitation, is the language of marginalization in so many ways. It is the language, like I said, of imperialistic conquest and violence, and it's the language of the American manifest destiny. It is a language fueled and tainted with the horrors that is enacted on other people. And this poem is really a reflection on this, and really kind of a grappling with the idea of, like, as much as I love, I majored in English with an emphasis in creative writing, and every day my mountain of student debt like looks at me and was like, was it worth it? Did you have a great time pursuing your passion now that you have all of this money stacked up? And it's like, yes, it was, but also, like, just really interacting with, like, the fact that, the language has produced so many works of literature and poetry and, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, that I find so beautiful and invigorating on not only, like, an intellectual and psychological level, but also, like, a spiritual level, in the sense of, like, something that really speaks to a kind of a deeper, less articulate and kind of logical sense of who we are, kind of like that depths of our being, which is something that I really talked about in the first episode of this podcast. But, like, grappling with the fact that, like, despite there are those works that exist, like, really when you talk about English, all of those works are tainted with the history that the language itself kind of represents and contains and has been a part of. And so this was kind of a piece that I wrote in terms of, like, really investigating that and kind of trying to make sense of it. So again, this poem is just simply titled English, and inspired by the phrase "the English language the English language is violence" from Billy Woods' last record. Speaking this language of split atoms and serrated blades, I've come to learn that even the most innocuous of phrases carry the scent of death. Every hello is a stray bullet streaking through an unsuspecting neighborhood. Every goodbye is a nation brought to its knees by a foreign god. Every syllable of my speech is an ode to the desecration of being. I am so sorry for the killer's tongue in my mouth. But even in this utterance of repentance and grief, entire worlds have been reduced to ash and dust. Thank you. So, sorry, no, that is not the most cheerful poem. But I mean, I think if you have read any of my work, followed me at all, you probably know that, like, my work is not the most cheery. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate a nice, happy poem, or, can really appreciate, more hopeful and, uplifting poetry. I do really love that type of work, too. It's got its place, and it's an art form of itself. But, again, being me and being really just invested in the gothic and the grotesque and, like, the uncanny and the surreal, it's like, it is kind of like, it would be disingenuous to be like, oh, I'm such a happy-go-lucky guy, here's that poem. Like, it just doesn't feel authentic. Like, I've tried it a few times just to try and, like, diversify my output, and it always comes across like just really disingenuous and, like, shitty, to be real honest, or at least I think it's shitty, so I don't ever share it. But I guess that's not true. I did share a couple. I think a while back I shared more of a poem based on, like, my practice of meditation and stuff like that, but even that's kind of reserved and more reflective. It isn't, like, joyous and, like, euphoric like that. It's just not how I write. So yeah, what am I doing next? Oh, yeah. This is a poem that I really like, and it's another really kind of simple, short, imagistic, kind of narrative-driven one. And really, I can't say much other about, like, in terms of inspiration or what it's about, other than I had this image of, like, a rabbit's foot on this wooden desk, like an old, like, well-kept, like a high-quality desk, well-varnished and all that. Like a rabbit's foot with a drop of blood on it, and, like, that it was attached to some, like, sheriff or, like, authority figure, and I don't know why. It was just during a draft, like a free write, it just popped into my head, and I think it had something to do with maybe, like, a song that I'd listened to recently or something like that. But for whatever reason, I had that image in my head, and I was like, well, I'm just going to follow this and see where it goes. And the original free write was, like, several pages long, and to have kind of whittled it down to what it is now is kind of wild to me. But it's a good thing, because a lot of it was garbage and didn't make any sense and just didn't need to be there. But this poem is simply titled Guilt. There's a drop of blood on the rabbit's foot the sheriff keeps on his desk. It lies beside the cigarette box his grandfather gave him. He knows whose blood it is, but not how it got there. Outside his window, a king snake stalks the shadows of hummingbirds. The setting sun is an irritated eye trying to blink away the speck of a premature star. The sheriff, pale and clammy, studies his sunken face in the glass of his gun cabinet, too preoccupied to notice the empty slot. Thank you. Again, I don't know anything else about what I was trying to get at with that poem, or, like, if there was any, like, deeper meaning or anything like that. I don't believe so. But I liked the image and just kind of ran with it. So, in this last one, I'm going to end of my poems, my personal poems, ones that I've actually written myself, is one based on a trip. My parents, have a camper at a campground in Oklahoma that they use as kind of like a little summer getaway. Um, and I remember taking a trip down there when it had flooded. They'd had a bunch of rain and a bunch of storms that come through, and it was kind of beautiful because just like all of these like areas that were like picnic grounds and like all the way up to like the fish cleaning station was like flooded, and it was really interesting. I have pictures of it somewhere, and I wish I knew where they were. I may have deleted them, or maybe just never got around to finishing and like actually like doing the editing and color correction and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just a really kind of interesting thing to look at. At least I thought it was. And then we came back a couple months or a few weeks later, and the water had receded. And I remember walking along the kind of like unearthed shoreline and like seeing like, skeletons of like gar and different fish that had been kind of unearthed from that. And it was really like, I just thought it blew my mind. I thought it was incredible. Like I just really enjoyed taking that trip and kind of taking pictures of it and like really studying it. And this is just a poem it's informed by those. So this is called Study of the Life Cycle. The robins are confused. Where yesterday there was damp soil teeming with worms, today there are several feet of fresh water from the flooded lake. Schools of minnow bristle against broken blades of grass, feeling the freshness of summer pastures for the first and only time. The gulls glide and tumble upon the currents of the wind, turning and rising like kites attached to phantom strings, their feathers the white of an empty canvas. I walk along the new shoreline with my family, taking in the imperial waves. Entire picnic tables have been Entire picnic tables have been sucked into the undertow to wash up on the other side of the lake. The greenhouse turned to ruins by the gentle, persistent tides. The wooden posts of the fish cleaning station, investigated by curious bluegill. Weeks later, I'll return to find the land reclaimed, but scarred with erosion. The skeletons of gars, dozens of them, will litter the newly revealed topsoil. I'll observe the bones, picked clean by the vultures that form black rings against the aquamarine sky. Each miniature sea monster reduced to marrow and rot, to mere reminders of the soft strand of yarn the fates keep tied around our waists, the slight, ever-present pull they exert on us, bringing us slightly closer to them with each passing breath. Thank you. So that'll do it for my original work today, but I thought it would be fun to end today by doing a short reading, just one poem from a book I've been working through on one of my favorite poets of all time, and really my first favorite poet, and that's Pablo Neruda. Obviously in translation, unfortunately I'm not bilingual. I took fucking 5 years of Spanish from middle school to high school and was a straight C plus student in that class, partly because I didn't apply myself and partly because I didn't know how to study and it was difficult, and I was a little punk teenager, and yeah, I just did none of it stuck. Enough of it stuck that I can kind of like get the gist of a sentence or like a conversation if I catch it, but like to actually respond or formulate like an actual thought or idea about it, no. So this is a work of Neruda's in translation. It is from the book 5 Decades, Poems 1925 to 1970. It's a really brilliant bilingual edition, and it really is a really great survey of his career. And I've been really enjoying it. I used to read like ravenously, particularly in like, when I was finishing college, and kind of right after that. But having moved to like a nonprofit 9-to-5 job that requires a lot of, mental engagement and different social interaction and different things like that, just being like an introverted person by nature, sometimes it just takes a lot out of me. And when I get home, I don't want to read a book and really think through shit or anything. So I've been reading this one slowly, and kind of revisiting some poems I've read before, because it is a collection that has some. I also have like his Ode to Common Things and a couple other, I want to say 100 love sonnets currently. So kind of revisiting through reading this and getting some new poems from Neruda, but also revisiting some that I really already know I love. And that's been really awesome. I think, started to get into Neruda my freshman year of college. He is a poet that, even in translation, so again, I want to preface this that by being in translation, I understand that this is a collaboration between the original poet and the translator. Ben Bellet, I believe is his name, did a wonderful job of this translation. Probably my favorite translation of even some of the poems I'm familiar with of his. Does a really great job of capturing that sort of subtle surrealism, that imaginative way of kind of combining words and phrases in seemingly illogical ways, but in ways that are still really resonant on sort of that level of the poetic image or of really communicating an emotion or an idea. It's very evocative language, which is not to say that Neruda doesn't write more pointed poems that are, about things, particularly like his Ode to Common Things is very graspable in that sense, but like the way he takes those simple items and warps them through all of this kind of dreamy, surreal, lyrical language, kind of I don't know what I'm trying to say. He just has this beautiful, beautiful, like, sense of prosody and like how words sound together, and he uses that kind of understanding of phonetics and of sound to really create, like I said, very interesting novel combinations of words that sometimes feel like a little disparate and illogical, but always seem to kind of resonate on a level that goes a little bit beyond that, and which is why I really talk about it kind of like in a sense of like dreaming. Has a very evocative emotional quality to it. It's very passionate poetry as well. So I want to read this poem just to kind of share a little bit about my influence and some of the stuff that I really love. This poem is titled Ballad. It is from Book of Vagaries that I believe came out... Hold on. I could just do half a second of research by flipping the pages back to tell you. It came out in 1958, so this is a definitely, mid-20th century, which is really, I think, 20th century poetry is definitely a place that I really just find fascinating. There were a lot of, when you think about kind of the socio-cultural changes in terms of modernism and modernism moving into postmodernism in the back half of the century, the world wars, the different political uprisings and revolutions and different trends like that. I think it's just a really interesting time to look back on and kind of absorb the art from. So this poem, Ballad from Book of Vagaries, is one that I read recently, and it really struck me and stuck with me, and I just wanted to share it to kind of conclude this episode. So this is Ballad by Pablo Neruda, translated by Ben Bellet. Come back, a guitar told me, near Rancagua in autumn. There, all the poplars had the color and vibration of bells. It got cold, and the sky curved itself over our sadness. A drunk entered a cantina, staggering under the grapes that brimmed from his hat and spilled out of his eyes. There was mud on his shoes, as though he had trampled the whole substance of autumn and crushed out the gold of its fingers. I never went back to those meadows, yet the hour never strikes its dishonored and teetering stroke, but the buds and the smiles scatter over my heart. The oblivious numerals surrender their sanctity, and the guitar calls to me again. Much time has passed. Perhaps nothing is left of that now, neither autumn nor meadow. I'd be back in an instant, like a wraith in the emptiness, with my hat full of grapes, asking for someone's guitar. But since no one would be there, and no one would understand anything, I'd find my way out again, closing the door that no longer exists. Gosh, I love that. I think it's for me, it's the one that I always fixate on like a little bit, but the mud on his shoes and like he had trampled the whole substance of autumn. That phrasing is just so beautiful to me. So, guys, I think that's it. I think that does it. I think we're done. I'm trying to think of how to wrap this up. But really, all I'm going to say is thank you very much for listening if you made it this far. I'm going to do the stupid self-promotion nonsense. If you could subscribe or like or share or comment or do anything or blah, 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 you know all the stuff. If you could do that, I know that it does help the channel grow. And while I'm not really in it for that, I really just wanted to have an outlet. When I started doing this in the Instagram, I really just wanted to do this as an outlet for some of the stuff that I've been writing, because it was just sitting around not doing anything. And yeah, so, but if you could do that, it really means a lot. If you want to go over, follow me on Instagram at AnotherDeadPoet12. I thought Another Dead Poet was a real clever pen name, and then I realized that was already taken. So 12 is my old baseball number, and I just went ahead and threw that on the back, and voila. So yeah, if you want to go follow me at, not father me, I have a father. Hello, Jonathan, Mr. Jones. I hope you're doing well. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you want to go follow me at Another Dead Poet 12 on Instagram, or go check out the first episode of this on the Art of Kendrick Lamar, Mike, and the Art of Healing, that would be awesome as well. But otherwise, that is all I've got for you guys today. Until next time, stay on the lookout for that Cause episode about pop art and graffiti and street art and all of the good stuff. Good old capitalism, baby. But yeah, be on the lookout for that as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for spending some time with me. This has been Live from Ghost Town with Another Dead Poet. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.